Before the public even had time to process what happened, a name was handed to us: Tyler Robinson. No hesitation, no uncertainty. His mugshot hit every screen. His story was sealed before a single question could breathe. They said the case was airtight: DNA on a towel, location data near the rooftop, rumors of a quiet confession behind closed doors. The media framed it as quick justice. Officials called it decisive, and the public was told there was nothing left to debate. But then the cracks started showing. Not from conspiracy blogs or online speculation, but from inside the scene itself. Witnesses who were there that night are contradicting the official timeline. People closest to the investigation are whispering about missing frames in the footage. Field agents admit there were unexplained surveillance blackouts exactly when the shot was fired. Forensic details don't align with the weapon they claimed he used. And now, testimonies, real, verifiable testimonies, are painting a picture that doesn't just raise doubt, it dismantles certainty. Ask yourself this: why were we given a suspect before the evidence was even sorted? Why were angles of footage sealed? Why did the narrative come fully packaged before the investigation was done? What if the truth isn't that Tyler Robinson is guilty? What if the truth is that someone needed him to be? Because if he wasn't the shooter, that means someone else was. And somebody out there already knows who. Before we dive into today's story, kindly subscribe to our Shadow Detective channel if you believe in fighting for justice. Kindly help us reach 300 subscribers, and we believe that with energy and support we will achieve it. Let's build this community that refuses to stay silent, to stop asking the hardest question of all. But why? Every view, every comment, and every subscriber is a stand against silence and a step toward truth for those who can't fight for themselves. The moment Tyler Robinson's name surfaced, it wasn't presented as a possibility, it was delivered as a conclusion. No hesitation, no alternatives, no mention of other suspects questioned in those first critical hours. It was as if the system had been waiting for a name, not searching for the truth. And here's what no one wants to admit: not a single eyewitness placed him with the rifle. No one in the crowd saw him carrying it. No stagehand, no crew member, no attendee has testified to seeing him anywhere near the shooter's perch with a weapon in hand. The alleged rooftop access point, no fingerprints tying him to the entry. No direct visual confirmation, just assumptions built on paperwork and timing. Now look at the timeline. The shot was fired, chaos exploded, and within hours before ballistics were processed, before surveillance had been reviewed, before witness statements were even fully collected, Tyler Robinson was declared the man responsible. How does that happen? How do charges form faster than the evidence? Even more suspicious, the arrest came before the full crime timeline was put together. His name was broadcast by the press before investigators finished their first sweep of the scene. Key footage was still being pulled. Statements were still being collected. Yet somehow, his face was already in circulation. That doesn't look like justice in motion. It looks like a narrative placed on standby, waiting for a body to attach it to. So you have to ask, why was Tyler Robinson instantly labeled the killer? Why were there no eyewitnesses confirming his proximity to the weapon? Why did the arrest move faster than the investigation itself? And who benefited from pushing his name before the dust even settled? The prosecution built its confidence on one word: DNA. They pointed to a towel wrapped around the weapon and a screwdriver found near the rooftop entry. Both, they claimed, carried traces of Tyler Robinson. But here's what they left out. None of his DNA was found on the trigger, the grip, or the interior components of the rifle itself. The most critical contact points, the ones a shooter would undeniably touch, came back clean. Then there's the weapon. The bullet fragments recovered from the scene don't align perfectly with the rifle the state claims was used. Independent experts quietly noted discrepancies in the rifling marks and casing impressions, details that should have halted the narrative cold. Instead, those findings were minimized, sealed, or brushed aside as non-essential. Chain of custody, that's another fracture. The items said to carry Tyler's DNA were reportedly moved, repackaged, and transferred between teams with incomplete documentation. Early logs don't match later filings. Even the timing of when the evidence was processed raises eyebrows. Some of it tested before it was officially listed as collected. And then access. To reach the alleged shooter's location, someone needed time, positioning, and an escape route. Forensic teams admit there was no shoe residue, no fabric threads, no glove fibers confirmed as Tyler's. Even his clothing showed no gunshot residue, despite the prosecution insisting he fired a high-powered rifle in a confined space. Put all that together and the picture changes fast. You don't get a clean gun. You don't get mismatched ballistics. You don't get missing chain of custody entries, unless someone needed the evidence to say something it didn't. So here's the question that keeps coming back. Was the evidence pointing to Tyler Robinson, or pointed at him? For an event that size, with high-profile security, multiple angles and digital monitoring, there should have been no blind spots. No missing seconds. No empty frames. But that's exactly what we got. The camera covering the rooftop access point, it went dark minutes before the shot. Not a glitch, not a blur. A full blackout. And the justification. Technical interruption. Conveniently timed, conveniently unexplained. Another angle, one pointing toward the section where the shot was believed to originate, shows a clean visual feed right up until the moment the trigger was pulled. Then in the exact window the public would expect to see movement, recoil, or retreat, the footage jumps. A cut so precise it doesn't look like malfunction. It looks like editing. What's worse, there were backup feeds. Parallel surveillance recordings from event staff, building security, and nearby businesses, none of which have been fully released. Some were withheld for chain of evidence. Others were under review. A few simply not available. People who've seen snippets describe shadows, not faces, movement, not identity. And then there's the inside whisper. Someone on the tech side claims frames were pulled before distribution to the investigative teams. Not destroyed. Not erased. Just removed from circulation. Hidden, buried, labeled as unverified or irrelevant. Even more alarming, audio logs from communication headsets cut out during the same window of missing footage. No crosstalk. No real-time response. No chatter about the shooter's position until after the camera feed resumes. So ask yourself this. Why did the cameras fail at the exact moment clarity was needed? Why were the angles that could confirm or deny Tyler's presence the same ones that went dark? And who had access to pull, mute, or filter those feeds before they ever reached the public, or the courtroom? Because once surveillance stops telling the truth, it starts protecting someone. And it wasn't him. Long before the headlines locked onto Tyler Robinson, people on the ground were already talking quietly, carefully, and off the record. And what they described does not match the man in custody. Several attendees reported seeing a second figure near the upper access point, not carrying a weapon, but moving with intent. Taller, broader shoulders. Dark clothing that didn't match Tyler's build or outfit that night. Some said they assumed it was security, until the shot was fired. One crew member swears they saw someone duck behind an HVAC unit, moments before the feed cut. Their statement was taken, then never referenced again. Another staffer working audio said there was commotion above them just before the chaos, but the official report later claimed no one was on that level at all. And then there are the murmurs from inside the tech booth, people claiming that a final mic check or backstage audio picked up a voice that didn't belong to the victim, or to Tyler. That clip has never been released, and no agency has confirmed its existence, but insiders keep bringing it up like a rumor no one can kill. The most chilling part: several witnesses described movements on the rooftop after the shot: quick, precise, silent. Not panic. Not confusion. Almost like someone trained to leave without being seen. Yet none of those eyewitness statements made it into the public briefings. None were emphasized in court filings. None were amplified by the media cycle that rushed to a name. So here's the fracture no one can plaster over. If people saw someone who didn't match Tyler's description, if movement was recorded in angles that were never released, if multiple testimonies point to a second presence, then either investigators missed it, or someone needed them to. For the official version to hold, Tyler Robinson would have had to be in position, armed and undetected in the critical window leading up to the shot. But the timelines available now, public and sealed, aren't lining up with that story. First, phone data. His device pinged a tower, placing him on the opposite side of the venue just minutes before the shooting. The prosecution says they can explain the discrepancy, but they haven't. And the exact timestamp of when he supposedly moved into place doesn't exist on paper, only in assumption. Second, eyewitness placement. Multiple people reported seeing him in a different zone of the venue shortly before the shot, near the concourse, not near the access point to the rooftop. Some placed him in motion, talking with someone. Yet those accounts were either reframed or buried under ongoing review. Third, gunshot residue. You don't fire a high-powered rifle in close proximity without traces left behind. But he tested clean. No residue on his hands, clothing or bag. The explanation: authorities said he may have worn gloves. Convenient. Except no gloves were recovered that matched him, no fibers connected him, and no prints tied him to the rifle itself. Fourth, time of arrest versus time of action. He was taken into custody astonishingly fast, before investigators had fully mapped the movement routes around the scene. Almost as if his arrest was predetermined, not reactive. And finally, movement logistics. To access the rooftop, position the weapon, fire a targeted shot, conceal or drop the gun, and leave without alerting anyone, all within minutes, would require precision and prep, not guesswork. Nothing in Tyler's background supports that kind of calculated execution. So when you step back and strip away the headlines, you're left with this: his phone wasn't there. His body wasn't placed there. His DNA wasn't on the trigger. His clothes were clean. His timeline doesn't match. Which means the real question isn't how he did it. It's how they convinced everyone he did. When a crime of this scale explodes in public, someone always steps in to control the story. And in this case, the story landed faster than the facts ever could. Tyler Robinson wasn't just arrested, he was delivered to the public. His face hit broadcasts before the forensics were even processed. His name trended before the first round of testimony was logged. That kind of speed doesn't come from certainty. It comes from strategy. And this is where the pattern starts to show. 1. The political fallout needed containment. The shooting shook the system. Public figures, event organizers, law enforcement, security agencies. Naming a suspect early meant preventing panic, finger-pointing, and questions about how a shooter got that close in the first place. 2. Liability dies when blame is assigned. The moment Tyler became the shooter, attention shifted away from venue failures, surveillance blackouts, and the unexplained gaps in security. The faster his name spread, the fewer people looked at who else had access, clearance, or motive. 3. A clean narrative protects reputations. Officials got to say the case was under control. Media outlets got a headline that wouldn't need updates. Event organizers avoided scrutiny. No one had to explain why backup cameras glitched, why the rooftop wasn't sealed, or why private footage hasn't surfaced. 4. A fall guy is easier than a manhunt. If the shooter escaped, the blowback would be catastrophic. If there were accomplices, the investigation would widen. If someone with influence was involved, it would take time, money, and exposure. But Tyler? He had no power, no platform, and no protection. And this is the part people don't want to say out loud. When a suspect fits the script stops changing. So ask the only question that matters in a cover-up. Who needed it to be him, before anyone could prove it wasn't? Because whoever gained from his arrest had far more to lose if the truth got out. Now the narrative is no longer holding under its own weight. The pieces that were supposed to lock the case in place are starting to pull apart, and not because of speculation, but because the facts refuse to stay buried. Every rushed decision is now coming back into question. The lightning-fast arrest, the sealed footage, the edited camera feeds, the buried witness statements, the mismatched forensics, and the testimonies surfacing now aren't whispering. They're cutting through the official version with precision. There are people who were there that night, who no longer believe the story they were told to accept. Quiet leaks from inside the investigation hint at suppressed footage and discarded angles. Defense consultants are already pointing to the bullet rifle mismatch, the missing residue, the absent fingerprints. And even those who initially agreed with the charges are starting to admit, off record, that the case may not survive a full, public unpacking. This isn't about clearing a name. This is about exposing a lie. Because if Tyler Robinson wasn't the shooter, that means three things. Someone else pulled the trigger. Someone else walked away. And someone in power decided the public would never know. The question now isn't whether the case is cracking. It's how long they can hold it together before the truth kicks the door down.